Hi everybody, this is Rose of Sharon, and I'm back again with another book review. I just recently read Hazel Gaynor's The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter, and this is based on an actual lighthouse keeper who was responsible for rescuing sailors who had gone through wrecks, and she was required to give them aid. It was more of the sort of instance where when that happened, it was the responsibility of the lighthouse keeper to aid and succor those who had been hurt in wrecks. And she was just one of many, but there are many characters that are involved within the narrative, and they each have their own tale to tell. And it's an immigration story too. There's an Irish woman who immigrates to America with a baby on the way, and it's very telling. It's actually a really good viewpoint on what it was like for the immigrants coming over from Ireland themselves. And this happened during the 1800s, and according to Hazel herself, with the heroine involved who actually did a lot of rescuing, she died of consumption, or what we know as tuberculosis, at 24. And at the time, along with scarlet fever and yellow fever and dysentery, tuberculosis was the main cause of death at the time. It was just a terrible, terrible way to die, very painful, and I don't know what would be worse than that, but many lives were claimed by that unfortunate disease. And unfortunately, the real heroine of the lighthouse itself, she perished in that way. But it's a beautiful story. There is a lot of uplifting things that occur. There's a romance that occurs within it. I'm not going to say between what characters, because it makes it all the more intriguing, and I don't want to spoil anything. But if you're like me and you like historical fiction, I would pick it up because it's a ravishing read. It's one that's so poetic you can't put it down. It's just so lyrical in the way that Hazel describes just the clothing of the time, the Victorian era, and the romance surrounding that, how poetic that is in and of itself, when we all know that just because everybody thinks it probably wasn't the best of times. But we like to romanticize it just because, I mean, if you look at the clothing, it was extravagant. I guess there's a certain air of finery with Victorian era clothing, but that's just my opinion. And I love the Victorian era. It's one of my favorite periods of time. Obviously, is if you know me well enough, you realize I'm obsessed with Queen Victoria, amongst Elizabeth, the second more than the first, and Queen of Scots, whom I really want to see that movie. I guess I have to wait for it to come out on DVD. But that being said, I absolutely adore the book. It is splendiferously written. It's extremely detailed and gloriously written between the chapters, just told from different viewpoints and the different characters that tell their point of view of the story. And of course, we have the artist who finds himself shipwrecked there and who is aided by our heroine. And a lot of things tend to pivot upon that particular point, because that's what they call a Deus Ex Machina, or just kind of a shift within the tale. You think, Chekhov's gun, everything's going to shift, and it does from that point on. But there are many Chekhov's guns within the tale itself, but you know that something's going to happen, and of course a lot of death occurs too. It's very sad, but time and tide wait for no man. And being that they're in the location that they are, it makes sense. But it's not sugar-coated in any way, but it's really quite a lovely little story, and just having the tidbits from history in there make it all the more fascinating. And you wish you had more information about this particular heroine, because according to Hazel, she does indeed come off as quite the saint, and she did a lot. She helped where she was needed, even though she knew it was something necessary. She didn't do it because she knew it was compulsory. She knew she had to. It was just her calling. She was good at it. And she was fearless. She was not really shaken by anything, even the storms that came. And there's a chapter written by one of the females, the heroines within the tale, that she describes when the clouds have a certain shape, she absolutely loathes them. I thought, yeah, I can understand that. Being on the sea and loving to sail myself and adoring all things nautical, there's a certain shape of cloud that I would much rather not encounter while on the sea or a lake. Doesn't matter, it's still scary. But there was a saying in the book, and I think it was extremely apt, and just one of those credos that I think you could take home with you. It's just, a storm should never be feared. It should be respected. You show it one little glance of fear itself and you're already halfway dead. I thought, yeah, because fear can overtake you and make you irrational. And I have actually a little story about that. There was a tornado that happened in my hometown in 2008, and some shingles came off my house. Actually, I think it was when it was either 2006 or 2008. I don't remember. I've been through 3 tornadoes in my lifetime, and they still scare me to this day. But I was calm, cool, collected. I went into survival mode, and I didn't even know that the tornado was happening at the time. I just thought that my cats were running around, and one of my cats was just supplanted just right in the smack dab middle of the table, and he wouldn't go anywhere. He probably knew that something was terribly wrong, but I figured I'm going to put myself in one of the linen closets, but there really wasn't any room to go into the linen closet. So knowing what I did at the time, I ducked and covered underneath a table, and then I went to the bathroom away from any windows, so right between the halls, between the linen closet and another wall where there were no windows. It was an open hallway, but there was nowhere else I could go. But I was safe. There's just a few shingles were actually torn off the roof, and that's all that happened. We were very, very fortunate that we didn't lose anything in the house itself, but eventually, we all know, if you were some of my faithful gardeners, that eventually I had to sell the house itself. It was just too depressing to live there. But I'm going to be looking for another house. But other than that, that's basically all I have to say about The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter. And I enjoyed every second of it, and it's well worth the read. It's outstanding and magnificent. And that's about it. Until next time, live long and prosper. Ciao, tutti.